What's up, everyone? Maximilian here, and welcome back to Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, The Online Warrior Season 2, and we're on Episode 21. So, switching things up a little bit this week, the main point character you'll be seeing today is Nova, and I'll be talking about that in a little bit and why that has come to be. So, for anybody that has followed up in the previous episodes, we had a lot of discussions in multiple episodes talking about tiers, how tiers affect fighting games, and the longer-running impact on the characters you'll be seeing in a fighting game on a competitive level, or online play for the most part. I mean, it's no shocking factor that almost every single person you run into online is running Virgil, or some team variant using Virgil, because the guy is really damn good and pretty easy to use to boot. There was also some pretty interesting video that came up over the past week that was almost awkwardly convenient with these topics at hand, and it was with Richard Wynn, who is a very profound Dante player since the original Marvel vs. Capcom 3 of Vanilla. And he had some interesting topics of conversation regarding the SoCal scene and what it takes to be a winning player. And if you guys watched that video or had come across that video on Event Hubs or SRK, or I think it was on the Level Up YouTube channel, it was essentially calling out people for not picking the better characters and their drive to win. Like I said, pretty convenient, because that was almost the exact topic in the previous episode. Choosing what you will to win and choosing what you will based off what you like. Even to dive into this a little bit more, I don't want to talk about these subjects too much more, because the discussion of tiers in a game with so many characters like Ultimate Marvel 3 can only have so much girth. But what I did want to say is that a lot of the times with the perspective of the internet, the perspective of a community that's always watching now, things are a lot different than they were before. You know, when fighting games before, a lot of people gravitated towards those really powerful characters, and the people that played the powerful characters, it's like, oh, you're playing the game right. You're the one that's absolutely like, you know, you're serious about winning. Nowadays, when people see the same thing over and over and over again because they're exposed to it more often, they're at home, they're watching live streams, they're watching YouTube channels, they're watching their friends, they're watching friends of other friends, and you see the same thing over and over again. It gets really repetitive, and many people get really annoyed by it that aren't of the higher upper level echelon. The reason this pressure can feel so great to not use certain characters sometimes to a multitude of folks that are trying to play Ultimate Marvel 3 or whatever fighting game is because the perspective of the internet and the entire giant community of like fighting game community players on the internet has changed drastically, and the folks that don't take the game competitively represent a really, really large percentage of the people that actually do take the game extremely seriously and competitively. And those people's voices can seem pretty loud sometimes, and they can actually take up a greater like thought process of yours to think like, oh, should I actually use Virgil? Should I actually be using, you know, Zero or Doom or something like that? And it ends up being that a lot of perspective of players ends up getting altered. A lot of different situations that people just genuinely like using some of these other characters, like LLND just seems that he likes using Shenko, you know, it looks like that other guys just like using Thor, like Royal Flush and stuff like that. So it's kind of hard to say like whether or not these people getting called out is a bad thing. I think that these guys like using these characters, and I don't see any problem with that. I think that in order to have a proper, steady, competitive environment, these characters will win every once in a while. They won't win nearly as consistently, which is exactly what we were talking about before. But that variety is what we need as an audience, you know what I mean? When you watch a football game, you know, sure, like one certain football team, like the Patriots a few years ago, might have just been steamrolling through everybody and had a perfect season, and everyone was expecting them to win the Super Bowl as well, but they actually don't end up winning the Super Bowl. Like, the one character in your fighting game that was supposed to win didn't win, and it's the same thing related to real sports. So, it's even though we have these guys that play these lower tier teams, they're kind of like the heroes because they choose to take the harder path. They choose to take, you know, reuse, you know, walkway to victory, which is the long, hardened, battle-driven path that's not going to come easy and is going to come with a lot of doubt and a lot of like non-victory. But at the same time, you can also respect the guys that go straight for the most technical, cheap stuff in the game. It's really up to you, and the perspective of people on the internet of which ones they like gravitate towards really goes towards the people that actually don't pick the top tier characters. It's just the perspective of the internet, and that perspective can be pretty influential on top players and how they choose their teams. So who knows, it really, a lot of top players pretty much play to win, and they don't care what people think, and that's what you gotta really consider, is that even though you're using the cheapest stuff possible, do you play to win and get the money, or do you play to appease the crowd? And that's something that has really changed with fighting games since back in the day. Play to win, or play for an audience, and it's absolutely changed how fighting games are played nowadays, and on the perspective of the people that actually watch and enjoy fighting games. But getting away from that topic at hand, I just wanted to quickly cover that because there was related community news and stuff that was going on to the topics we were talking about too. What I wanted to talk about in this episode primarily was me switching to Nova for this play session I had here. So if you guys remember, about a couple of weeks ago, we did a week of Nova, where I put Nova on point, went against, I think, a bunch of player matches or ranked matches. It was something like that, but I essentially was using a lot of Nova to get used to him. When it comes to this game, the saddest thing is that I only get maybe a few, 2 to 3 hours every single month to play, and I have this gigantic play session of Ultimate Marvel 3. I really wish I had the opportunity to play a couple hours a night, or a couple hours for only a few nights out of the week. I would actually be able to get a lot more consistent combos and actually get a lot better a lot quicker if I was able to do something like that, because you only get good at something as much as you practice it. But I don't actually sit in the lab very often. The last time I did, I actually found some really crazy new Dante and Doom combo that I had never even known about before, while just messing around with TAC stuff, and I put up a video about it called Lab Time. But I don't really get that opportunity too often, and when I jump online, it becomes a very tedious process of reminiscing with the delayed input, reminiscing with how people are going to be playing certain characters online, and it takes me about 10 matches to finally get used to things, and those first 10 matches can be extremely rough. And this is the situation that I kind of wanted to give people an example, is when you have no hope, when it's there's no reason for me playing right now, because there's just whatever I've been doing is just not working right now, and this was absolutely my case when going into this play session. So when I first started this evening, I was actually using my main teams, which was Dante and Wesker with Strider and Doom, of course, and nothing was working. Quite literally, everything that I had been trying to do before, it was just not working. Now, this happens in a lot of fighting games, and this happens in a lot of competitive games in general when you guys play something for an extended period of time, or you're revisiting something after so many years of playing it, and you come back and all of a sudden, wow, I suck. Nothing's working at all. This is when you kind of need to sit back and reevaluate something. During this period where I was using Wesker and Dante and just nothing was working, it was alright, I'm gonna take a break. This is clearly not working out. I might have to skip an Online Warrior this week because I just have no decent footage at all and a lot of losses, and it's man, this is rough. I'm not playing good in any way, shape, or form to do an Online Warrior episode. So I took a break, and I came back about an hour and a half later, and I'm I'm gonna try something different. Why not? In the perspective of ranked online games, in a game like UMVC3, a lot of people go towards the powerful strategies, the powerful characters, because they want to win. They want to get the win. But what it makes is ranked a very hostile environment to try to learn new characters, because you will just get absolutely wrecked by dudes. Which is why player matches, as I've learned, is an excellent avenue to try to learn new characters, which is where I think I was using Nova. So getting into it, I had Nova on point, as you guys are seeing right now, and I only had about a few hours experience when I was first recording the week of quote-unquote Nova, and not that much time, and it's been quite a bit of time since then that I had used the character. So I was going to go into this and be alright, we'll see how this goes. I know the angles of Nova's mobility, what makes him pretty decent as far as these angles, TAC combos with Dooms. Let's give it a shot, why not? And surprisingly, it worked out really well. I was so frustrated earlier with this game, and this is my advice to you guys that get really frustrated. I was so done, and I'm just you know what, forget it. I'm not having any fun. It's no good. We're just gonna ignore the Online Warrior this week. And I went back with Nova, and everything fell into place. It's really weird how one small change to your otherwise working game plan can sometimes put things into perspective. I notice online, and especially online with myself, that I kind of get into this flow, and you don't really recognize what you're doing many times. You don't realize that you're repeating patterns or stuff like that, so you're not being very perceptive about what you're doing. And in a fighting game, that's one of the most important things besides character familiarity that you need to understand like what you're doing, what your opponent is doing, how to react, how to take advantage of this. And it just wasn't working with like Dante and Wesker for a long time. So I switched it up and I went to Nova, and I was able to get in a lot better setups, and I started learning a lot of stuff with this character. Nova, for the most part, is a fairly easy to use character. He's like a little bit more difficult to use than Wesker, but he's a heavy hitter, and what I like is that he sets up for the rest of my team pretty damn well. So any of you guys that actually run into situations like this, where it seems just like kind of like hopeless, it's like I can't get any better at Ultimate Marvel 3, like I am stuck in this rut and I do not know what to do. What I would recommend to you guys, and I see this question asked a lot, is take the characters you want to play as and understand the characters that are really good in Ultimate Marvel 3. What you should do early on is either take strategies or use the characters that are really good, and then switch back to the characters that you might actually have some more fun with. So what you need to feel like briefly is the taste of success, even at the hands of an extremely powerful character that you might not like. What you need to understand is how that character gets in, gets damage, what makes them good, and then you go back, and now that you understand how to win a game, take some of the strategies that you've learned and some of the ways that that character is powerful, and go back to your other characters. And there's actually a good chance that when you fight against that character again, that you'll be much better, like going up against Virgil or anything like that. You'll actually be a lot better fighting against that character, and I've noticed that too. When it comes to guys playing Strider or it comes to guys playing Doom, I kind of have this understanding of what makes those characters good and how they get in unless they have some crazy other strategy. And you understand where they need to go, what makes them powerful, what are their angles of attack, what part of the screen do they have the most control over, you know what I mean? That's a really important part of Marvel 3, figuring out where your character has a really powerful part of the screen. To give you guys a great example, like Wesker cannot control the upper forward part of the screen no matter where he is. So if he does a super jump, he can't do anything really straight ahead of him unless he does a super, and you can most of the time just block that. He can only do like a gunshot from straight up to straight down, and he covers like 3/4 of the screen, but 1/4 of it is just not, you can't do much. So a lot of characters are like that. A lot of characters can't control much. That's why Virgil covers a lot of space, and Zero almost covers the entire screen, which makes him so good. So based off this, if you guys are having trouble, try switching it up to some other characters, is all I'm really recommending. I think Nova's around the same quote-unquote tier category as like Wesker and Dante, for example. All three of them are really damn good. But at the same time, I just needed to feel something different, you know what I mean? I like keeping Strider and Doom just because those characters are my bread and butter, and I find them so much fun to play. But it really was refreshing to finally see something different and play as something different with strategies that aren't the same as what I usually use with like Dante and Wesker. And as you guys can see from the gameplay, it was working out. Sure, I was losing every once in a while, and it wasn't going absolutely swimmingly, but in a game like Ultimate Marvel 3 Online, you got to accept that you're gonna lose every once in a while. And even I run into a lot of players in this online environment that purposely reset their stats because they get upset because how many losses they have in this game. I think even some players have actually done this and actually come out and said that, yeah, I just reset my stats on Xbox Live. I don't even know how to do this. Which is funny, and I don't actually have any other accounts. I've always played on my main account. So I have a lot of losses because within all this time I've actually really tried to go in and learn other characters on my main point team, and it just goes horribly. What you also might notice is that in a lot of these videos you'll see me fluctuating between like First Lord to First Ranger to First Scout, like a lot, and that thing switches up a lot. What that actually means is that I think First Lord is like balance or something like that, like you're good balanced all around. First Scout, I think, is you're heavily offensive, and First Ranger, I think, is you're either heavily defensive or something like that. All these things actually have a different category of how good you are in a certain direction that little graph goes at the end of a match, which is really not important. The one you want to strive to generally is Lord, and every time you see the game like bump you down to Scout or something like that, I'm like, oh yeah, thanks video game, like I wasn't having a tough enough time as it is for you to like throw it in my face. So that's exactly what happened earlier, is that I was First Lord for a while, I saw it bump me down, I'm like, you know what, this clearly ain't working, and then came back and tried something new, and it surprisingly worked out pretty well. So any of you guys that have been having trouble with Ultimate Marvel 3, Let me know in the comments below what your issues are and what you're having trouble identifying, and maybe I can actually tackle this in a later episode of The Online Warrior for some of you guys that are trying to actively get better at the game at a very early level and you just don't get what you're doing wrong or what you need to do to get better. Because I think I can actually help you out in situations like that, similar to this one where I was able to tackle something that I had an issue with and it worked out pretty well. So thank you guys very much for watching. My name is Maximilian, and I'll see you next week.
Player 2 wins. Cut.